Hello, everybody. Today is March 31st, 2022. No. Wait, 2023. What's the year?
2023.
And we're doing robot nonsense.
Maybe you need a calendar robot.
Maybe. This looks also, speaking of robots,
This does not look appetizing.
Does not,
disgusting.
does not look appetizing. They call this a cake. I would say this is a lump of sugar
This
goo.
is slop, yeah.
Watch a robot 3D print a real cake. It's not a real cake.
It does improve throughout the video, but it's still disgusting looking.
The secret was printing graham cracker crust to use as a structural component for the sugar paste.
Like Cobb, where you have to have the straw to add the structural integrity.
And also, whoever wrote this article has never seen a chocolate 3D printer work, because that is the one true 3D printer thingy.
Food.
Also, this was like ready to eat. I thought maybe you'd print it and then
Bake
put it
it.
in an oven, but no, this is what you get.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, this is not real research that is going to further our fully robotic kitchen, making us fresh, delicious food.
Well, but that could be a nice little treat at the end of your 80-hour work week. Instead of just nutrient paste that day, you get a nice little 3D printed piece of cake.
It's gruel, everything the body needs.
And Ikea is doing a very intelligent thing with drones. This is fantastic. I wonder how many, though, come tumbling down. How often does that happen?
Ikea adds stock counting drones to more of its stores. I'm just imagining a hyperactive drone zipping through Lowe's, counting the number of plumbing bits and bobs that are there and figuring out what to reorder.
So you got a big store, inventory, you got employees constantly counting things. What's left? Well, this guy just does it all of his own. He goes and takes video of the whole thing, flies back to his nest, uploads the video. The AI looks at it, figures out what they've got and what they don't.
I think there was something similar in Jurassic Park, and they eventually ended up with too many dinosaurs.
You think they'll end up with too many couches?
I think life finds a way. I think those couches will multiply.
Well, I mean, obviously, these are drones to look for shrinkage. So eventually, the cheaper thing is just going to be to add a radio RF tag to literally every product and track it from the time that it leaves the shelf to literally everywhere in the store. Because surely that would be cheaper than a bunch of drones counting inventory, right?
Or each individual product could get its own robot, which is kind of what we're going to do with the bees.
Robot bees could support hive health and improve pollination one day.
What are they
just stop using insecticides that are really hard on the bees,
What are they going to be doing? Well, they literally describe it as these robots will be grooming the queens.
Yeah, I kind of was like, interesting.
So if this doesn't work out, then they'll have a future job as a Reddit moderator.
We could just, plant more wildlife and stop, like you said, stop using insecticides. No. How will we make money off of that?
So they're going to do a glass hive so they can watch it. And they're going to put like 7 or 8 of these bees, and they're all going to be taking care of one queen.
They haven't even tested it yet, yeah.
I can't wait to see that. Because what is that queen bee going to think?
It's just going to quietly fail, and then they're going to run off with that startup money.
And let's go for the AI section. I'm sure you've all heard most of this already, but the AI news is fast and furious these days. The first one is we were introduced to a new AI this week.
Google is releasing its Bard AI chatbot to the public.
It was a bit underwhelming.
Yeah.
It didn't do anything that we haven't seen before, and it made mistakes, as we are now learning that AIs constantly do. So
at the same time, I think Google's got to be feeling the existential threat that AI poses, but not for the reasons, like it's not AI replacing search. Search is the least threat that there is. AI is going to make it to where you don't need to search in the first place.
Well, while Google is showing us the first glimpse of their AI, Microsoft is busy stuffing AI into every orifice of every product that it sells.
GitHub Copilot gets a new ChatGPT-like assistant to help developers fix and write code. There's plugins. There's plugins for everything. The Visual Studio Code plugin is actually a lot of fun. You should play with it. It's maybe actually worth the $20 a month. It's crazy. But also, there's a plugin for Emacs.
Someday, the only person who remembers all the key binds for Emacs will be AI.
It's meta alt butterfly, obviously.
And again, Microsoft put AI in everything, and they're really they want the Bing browser to be the AI place to go to. And we saw their user numbers last week. It seems to be working.
Microsoft has brought OpenAI's DALL-E image creator to Bing. So it's going to be easier to just ask it to make things for you, and it will. It's not very good right now, though. It's actually probably worse than Stable Diffusion.
I'm actually really curious if this will lead to like kind of a perception of AI images as being lesser. So like there for a while, it was like everyone used those stock images of people in suits like shaking hands, and then everyone started making fun of that. And then it was the illustrations of the blobby people that became like all over the internet, and everyone was like, oh, I hate those now. Will AI images become that way because everybody uses them?
Did you see some of the Trump getting arrested AI images?
No.
He posted one himself.
They were amazing.
Was that a troll?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think he created it. But
No, he posted I think he was trolling.
No, he didn't get arrested. That was all AI generated. But they had pictures of him like running with an M16, being escorted by police. You know, it was crazy stuff, but it looked really good.
It looked even better than it did in the Ice Ice Baby Matrix, which wasn't terrible. It was okay.
And I saw when the news didn't get their headline for Trump getting arrested, they ran with the headline of AI generated images of Trump getting arrested. It was just like, we need to keep talking about this no matter what.
There was some editor that was like, we can run the story. It's like, but he didn't get arrested. It's like, don't worry about it. It's fine. That was the
those
guy.
images get reposted, and then people get upset, and it's like, I don't.
And reality breaks down. That's where we are.
Yeah.
And you might think to yourself, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm just going to do some online gaming with my children to try to escape it. Think again.
Roblox launches its first generative AI game creation tools. The Code Assistant and Material Generator hope to make the game creation less tedious.
So instead of teaching our children the basics of programming and how to construct things, just let the AI do it for them.
Heaven forbid they develop any kind of creative skills on their own.
I mean, it basically is already like that in Copilot. You can just sit down in Copilot and say, it's like, I would like for you to write a routine in Haskell that sorts prime numbers or something. And it's like, all right, here you go.
Well, the AI does get some small details wrong in generated images, and you might have to clean it up a little bit. And Adobe says, yes, we are ready to fill that role.
With Firefly, Adobe gets into the generative AI game. Just tell it what you need.
Photoshop, Lightroom, and one of their other products are all getting generative AI built in.
And they're like, don't worry, you can opt out. And I'm like, yeah, how long will that last?
Oh, are you making noise?
No, I don't think so. This is videos, but it's like GIFs of the videos.
Yeah. So this is the next stage, and it turns out that we're already like a third of the way there, maybe 2/3. This is the first iteration that's actually come out, but it's not even the best one yet.
Text to video generative AI is finally here, and it's weird as heck. Gen 2. That's what it calls. So pretty soon I'll be able to ask for it. Here's Lord of the Rings as an input. Replace Danny DeVito with all the characters. That's the entirety of the prompt. And we will have achieved the milestone that I predicted about 10 years ago.
Right now, you probably have to wait about 3 months for that to finish.
Yeah. $37,000 to fulfill my wish. You can make it happen by joining Patreon and Floatplane right now.
This guy will do 2-second videos, I think, or 3-second
scroll
videos.
through these videos. They're like a fever dream.
These are all text-based prompts.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, though.
I think, you know what, the impression that I got from this was Inception. Like, if they ever do an Inception 2 movie, that's the special effect that they need, because it's so good having one image morph into another image, especially like the city sunset and the streets of the city are like, you know, scooping up around the sides, and then they use this generative AI to take that and just make it go full fever dream. That's Inception 2.
Assuming they have source content for some of the imagery.
What are you talking about, Krista? I can literally just go give it Inception and feed some text into it and get it out the other side right now.
If you want something that looks like Inception 1.
That's a good point because, AI is not magic. It is simply taking all of our previous nonsense and regurgitating it back to us in a way that it thinks we like. And people are often shocked. It's like, oh my God, it's biased. Well, yeah, because it's reading the news websites that are biased. It's learning from people that are biased. Obviously it is, but this will absolutely be a battleground.
New York Times headline is, when ChatGPT was quizzed about politics, the chatbot tends to answer carefully. It's like, I'm neutral when it comes to politics or other subjects. I think this is a little bit of a Trojan horse. Like, it is obviously not that neutral internally, but it is being very carefully trained to
not give results one way or the other.
And those are very different things.
So, for example, they give the example here. It's ready to talk about Trump. It's not ready to talk about Hunter Biden. Just kind of hushes up about Hunter Biden. Somebody created a right-wing GPT, which is supposed to correct that, but ends up just doing it on the other side. So obviously our AI is going to be biased. And you should just not trust it because it's wrong most of the time.
It is wrong a lot. This is crazy. One of the gardening channels I follow did a video about gardening AI, and they were like, listen, you can ask it for certain things, but like it's just not going to understand the context or the nuance of like your soil type, your gardening zone, like that kind of thing.
Remember AI Dungeon? It would do so well at crafting the story, but then when we would try to get it to sort of hold on to elements of the story, it would forget.
Right.
And it'd be like, oh, that's a new character. It's like, no, we've had this character with us from the beginning.
And it would also like continually try to get us to sell babies.
Well, we did kind of push it in that direction.
Well, yeah, because it was funny the first time it happened. I was like, well, we have to have that happen every story now.
The thing though with looking at those kinds of AI systems and how they're built and the AI structure and all that sort of thing is that I don't know that we know how to actually build it in a neutral way.
There is no way.
There isn't, yeah.
Because how would you ever get a data set that's neutral?
Well, by neutral, I mean neutral in the same way that like a hammer is neutral. Like however you wield it is going to be how it ends up being used. And a hammer is sort of less effective if it turns to jelly when you're, I don't know, building a wall as opposed to building a house.
I don't think you're analog.
No, it's not a great illustration. I understand what you're trying to say, but I just don't think
Like,
information.
we need tools that are not nerfed, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, this is never going to be that.
Yeah.
The problem with when you take the training wheels off or the safeguards off is that it starts to tap into truths that people aren't willing to accept.
Or it turns into Tay.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes a horrible thing where it's just screaming obscenities like 4chan.
There are certain bedrock realities that we are no longer able to cite. And how would an AI ever know that? How would it ever be so tuned into the zeitgeist that it knows to stay away from certain things?
Maybe we could get the AI to pretend it was right at the fall of Rome. It's like, okay, can we talk badly about the Senate? No, we can't talk badly about it.
Yeah, but then the AI will be like, let's get some slaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's bring back gladiators. It's like, oh, no.
Women, why are they speaking? Well, one of the terrifying things, though, is that, we're moving ahead at such a fast pace. We know it's flawed. We know it's broken, but it's going to be so much of a part of our lives. And it might be like a cradle to the grave type of deal.
One AI tutor per child. Personalized learning is finally here.
This guy kind of struck me as like a well-meaning moron. Like,
Well,
not trying to be an ass, but
he's definitely an educational hipster.
Yeah.
And he points that out. I guess self-awareness maybe helps.
or maybe just bragging about I went to MIT.
But he's talking about how he runs a 15-child micro school. And he's like, yeah, textbooks, we take them out for real world stuff like this. It's like, well, what school has the budget for that?
Yeah, it's a great, I agree that we should be doing this, but I don't see how an AI helps do that other than putting more work on a overworked teacher who's like, now you need to generate all your lesson plans through AI.
I thought I read something much more nefarious here before I sort of decided that it's probably more like what Chris is saying. It's like, this is just a well-meaning blogger, but I thought this was a almost a clandestine argument for VR learning pods for children, because it's like, oh, we do all this stuff, and it's like, well, obviously that's good, but nobody's going to be able to do that. How? Oh, it's a VR headset.
I had that thought too, where I was like, is this guy just going to be pushing a startup at the end of the article? Yeah.
It's like the children have to wear a VR headset to experience this, and the AI is going to make sure that their experience is tailored for them. Okay.
And then you take all the budget that you take those taxes they're taking out of your TV bill, and instead of going to an actual physical school, it goes to the metaverse. Think about that.
And you don't have to build physical schools anymore.
And then kids who, actually have to work with their hands as they grow older won't actually have any context for that because they've just been educated in a cube.
Yeah.
They won't need their hands because they'll have their personal robot carrying them around.
Even if that's not the case, people like this will be a useful idiot for Meta
government to continue to control every aspect of our lives. Yeah, that's kind of where we're going. Well, maybe, just maybe, the Martian colony will be the new free frontier. We can go there. We can have some freedom until that gets ruined too in 200 or 300 years. But the way we get there could be completely new.
An alternative theory of inertia is going to get tested in space. It's the quantum drive. It's back again. It just won't die.
So we've had people who claimed that they proved the quantum drive does produce energy and produces thrust. We have people who say you're an idiot. That will never work. We're never able to make an agreement in the lab. So what are we going to do? We're going to spend billions of dollars and launch this thing into space, see what happens.
What's the worst thing?
Hey, at least those people will have jobs.
And on the moon, now we know that data centers on the moon, that's a thing we're going to have. But you got to power those data centers, right? How are you going to do it? Well, solar panels, but the moon does not have an atmosphere.
Sailors on the moon.
They will get blasted. And so we need something that's much more robust, but also much more catastrophic if it does get hit by one.
UK backs Rolls-Royce project to build a nuclear reactor on the moon. We actually do have updated nuclear reactor designs that fail safely. So I'm not as worried about this.
What is the UK doing right now?
Trying to prevent anybody from buying ARM.
Getting headlines.
Yeah.
Contemplating that Brexit might not have been a good idea.
And we mentioned last week that the 3D printed rocket was scheduled to take off. They had to cancel it. It turns out not only did they have some problems with it, but there was a guy in a boat out in like the launch area, and they're like, we can't launch because there's a boat. Just somebody out there enjoying the water. They did finally get around to it.
Relativity Space launched its 3D printed rocket, but it failed to reach orbit. Oh, we covered this. This is just a follow-up about how it failed.
No, they did not try it yet. They had to scrap the launch, and then it happened, and then...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
This is... I have to apologize for this, chat, because we didn't get to this story in a timely fashion.
Well, this was the 21st. How could we?
Oh, it's coming.
No, I think it's already passed.
Yeah, it's right now.
Yeah.
For us, it's right now. By the time you see it, it will have been long.
This is us fumbling.
A hole 30 times the Earth's size has spread across the sun, blasting solar winds that'll hit our planet by the end of this week. It's a little bit doom scrolling, but then if you're not aware of the, what was it? The
Carrington event?
Carrington event, yeah. You got to go look that up on Wikipedia.
That's some good doom scroll. Like, if you're like, the headlines aren't doing it for me anymore, let me read about the Carrington event.
The Carrington event was this, but we rolled a 1 during that solar event.
This big old chunk right here.
Yeah.
It's blasting us.
You could actually, so it wasn't visible where we are, partly because it was cloudy, but apparently with certain cameras, you could see it in like Virginia. But if you were even as far south, I think it's like Michigan, you could see the Northern Lights, which was pretty cool. I would love to see the Northern Lights.
Well, you've missed your chance now.
I know. I should have, yeah. Well,
you might have a chance tonight.
Maybe. I think it's supposed to be stormy all day, so.
Hopefully we don't lose the electric grid and or our satellites, because if we had to build a lot of electrical transformers really quickly right now, it
wouldn't happen.
It's just...
Listen, we lose the electrical grid right now, the way the world is right now, we're never coming back.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe like a couple hundred years.
If I had solar on the building, it would be confiscated by the feds.
Most of us would kill each other within 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think that, it's definitely a more active pattern for solar weather, but I think we're okay right now.
But
I don't think there's a risk, yeah.
We're entering a period of increased solar activity.
Well, when it comes to the origin of life on Earth, There's a lot of different theories. One of them is that a rock came down with some juice on it, and it found a perfect environment, and here we are. I don't know if I believe that, but we have a little bit more evidence maybe to support it.
RNA molecule uracil has been found on the asteroid Ryugu samples. Remember the asteroid that we blasted? It's got some organic compounds, and it's not just uracil. There's actually a lot more interesting stuff there.
Now, we've seen this before, but we could never be sure on the ones that actually fell to the Earth that they didn't get contaminated in some way.
We're sure now.
This one probably was not contaminated.
I'm pretty sure that Ridley Scott's theory that the engineers came here and disintegrated themselves into a waterfall is the correct one.
But they could have, just like scraped a little bit of themselves onto something and launched it here, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not what happens in the beginning of the popular movie Alien Covenant. Was that Alien Covenant? I think it was Alien Covenant.
Well, now let's go into the... so I've tried to sort the nonsense section this week so that we start with the bad.
And end on a good
and
note.
end with animals.
Yeah.
So let's start with the danger section.
400,000 gallons of radioactive water leaked from a nuclear plant in Minnesota.
Several months ago, but they just announced it.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
When I asked about that, they were like, yeah, there is a rule that says that we have to tell you within a certain amount of time.
If it's dangerous.
If it's dangerous, this is fine.
They said it's, I don't know how to, is it tritium?
Tritium?
Yeah, I don't say it out loud. That's the same thing that they're dumping into the ocean in Japan. And they're like, it's really not that bad. And like, maybe that's true, but it's hard to make that sound not terrible.
Here's the thing about it. If it's not that bad, why did you go to so much trouble to not let it out before?
Yeah. I'm sure someone in the comments will have more insight than I do, but
fun time.
yeah.
And if you're like, oh man, I don't want any of those dangerous particles near me. Well, have you had a nice piece of dark chocolate lately?
Ooh.
Hershey, quote unquote, evaluating if it can eliminate lead and cadmium from its chocolate.
Apparently this comes from the cocoa plant and there's not a whole lot they can do about it.
How about they eliminate some of the slavery from their supply chain?
I don't know if that'll help this. I mean, it's good. Probably a good thing to do.
Only 100 years from now, it's like only the most delicious chocolate contained trace amounts of cadmium.
We found that the satisfaction of chocolate was directly correlated to the amount of slavery.
Oh,
It's like the sweetener in this Roman wine was lead.
And St. Patrick's Day just passed. Did you guys get roaring drunk?
no. Well, it was Friday. We were here.
I had a nap.
I didn't either. Didn't wear green or taste alcohol that day.
Nope.
But a lot of people did. A lot of people had a good time.
Who
And
can afford alcohol in this economy?
as usual, when people get together in large groups in the modern police state, the natural thing to do is to take a high position and point rifles at them. But they did not take the necessary precautions.
Sniper rifle falls off of roof during Buffalo's St. Patrick's Day parade. Oops.
The snipers were also drunk.
Apparently, they claim it was a gust of wind.
Yeah.
But rifles don't have like a big wind profile.
What if it was on a tripod? It was just barely hanging on. And
He went to get a drink, and like he just kind of he thought it was fine, but it was like, a baby. It just tumbled right off.
you thought it would be easy being prone in the sniping position on a roof on the edge, but it wasn't.
My contact's reaching new points of pain.
You got like 15 more stories, Kristen.
I can do it.
Gut it out.
Ooh.
And this is a story, this kind of stuff that you love.
Oh.
Medical horror.
I love this. Candida auris, I think is how you say that, in New York. What to know about fungal infections spreading at alarming rate. This is not just in New York. This is actually something that's happening worldwide.
They got some numbers here. Although, luckily in 23, we've actually gone down a bunch.
Yeah. It's an interesting new thing. I wonder if it's because it's getting like warmer and moister,
It's
making it easier.
much like another recent issue that we had. It basically just affects the people who are already sick and old. So if you're young, you probably got this stuff on you at some point, but you're just fine with it. But then once you get susceptible, it starts to get in there, do some damage. Watch out for the fungus. And this is a little bit of a follow-up. We talked about in Japan. So we had the thing here where they were licking the ice cream. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Japan did their own version. It was sushi. But apparently the Japanese people were much less tolerant of this kind of thing.
Sushi terrorism, quote unquote. Viral pranks have caused an all-out panic in Japan. Twitter antics have led to 3 arrests and fears over the end of the sushi train tradition.
So they actually have a timeline here of how it played out. And by the end,
some good investigative journalism.
This guy was chugging soy sauce directly from the bottle. That's disgusting.
Ugh.
By the end, they have like cameras everywhere. They're locking down. They don't let certain people into these places. Like they took it really, really seriously. And if you get caught doing this now, forcible obstruction of business in the charge, 3-year penalty.
I like this.
Yeah, imagine if they did something like this at Golden Corral.
Yeah.
Also, okay, this is some weirdness. Like, someone I know from my hometown got married at a Golden Corral.
Wow.
Yeah.
The actual ceremony, not
Yes.
just the reception.
Actual ceremony was at Golden Corral. There
That's
are other
wild.
details that are more bizarre, but
That's
they might be
probably going to be
identifying.
easy to Google.
Well, no, it wasn't. It wasn't in local news. It was shared to me directly from a friend.
When, like, as the ceremony was happening, did I get to have a plate in front of me?
They did it in front of the chocolate fountain.
But I mean, as
Yeah.
a spectator,
You can just rent those.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I just saw photos. I don't know any other real detail.
remember the person who took the chocolate fountain and put sausage gravy in it?
It's going to be hard on the motor. It's like all the little chunks of sausage.
I think they did creamy.
Yeah.
They probably sifted out the sausage.
Yeah, no, I just...
You blend it up before you put it in.
why? Why would you do that?
Well, you alluded to this one. So Afro Man, popular with his song "Because I Got High," he is a famous rapper, and he was under investigation for something. I don't remember what the investigation was for. Anyway, he's got lots of surveillance at his house, so he caught it all on surveillance. And being a entertainer and understanding the business, he decided to use that.
Adams County Sheriff's deputies suing Afro Man for commercial use of surveillance video from a raid on his home. So it's really interesting. Supposedly they were looking for human trafficking victims and drug paraphernalia. They didn't find anything. But they disabled his security cameras in addition to breaking down his door and his gate and a bunch of other things. But they didn't disable the hidden security cameras. They only just disabled the regular security cameras. And
Whoops.
don't you know, they did find a bunch of cash, but they disagreed on how much cash they found. And then Afro Man found some footage from his hidden cameras. And then they found the cash, and that was just a miscounting. They just miscounted the cash. It was a completely innocent understanding that had nothing to do with Afro Man finding a second set of cameras in his house.
And some of these cops, as is the way of cops these days, not in the best of shape and not looking like the kind of guys who should be strapping on SWAT gear and going out and doing stuff. Of note was one that people felt looked a little bit like Peter Griffin, who they have dubbed, what was his name? Officer Pound Cake.
Well, the other reason that I read that he was Officer Pound Cake is because he really wanted to eat some lemon pound cake that was in the kitchen that they got on hidden video.
So now Officer Pound Cake is being used on merchandise and in the music videos directly. And these people are saying, we did not give you permission to use our likeness.
I hope this gets tossed out.
That's disgusting that they'll probably get him to stop.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's a story that was already absurd and just gets more absurd the more you
They
read.
didn't file any charges against him, which means that they found less than nothing.
Look at his weed pajamas.
Yeah. No, that's Canadian pride.
I don't think that's a Maple Leaf.
No,
Crystal.
I think it's fine.
And, they point out here, these guys had the choice. So let's say this is perhaps the last time you'll ever get to make this choice. Do you choose Waffle House or IHOP?
Waffle House, not even a question.
Yeah.
Next.
I think me too. Apparently not these guys.
2 Virginia inmates tunneled out of jail with a toothbrush and traveled 7 miles to go to IHOP, the cop said.
Was it Free Pancake Day? Free Pancake Day's in the spring.
They didn't say whether or not these guys got to get their food first because they got them at the IHOP.
Please, sir, I'm about to get my flavored syrup.
My stuffed French toast. It's funny. They got through the wall with like a nail or something on a toothbrush. When they got into the wall, there was some loose rebar in there, and they were like, tools.
Yeah. Wow.
And here's a terrifying story that shows like our senators are some horrible people. Like Mitch McConnell is one of the worst human beings to ever live. But even he, as far as I know, has not fallen to this depth.
Nigerian senator guilty of organ harvesting plot, UK court rules. Good Lord.
So they found a kid and they were like, hey, you want to go to the UK and have like a fun tour and do some stuff? Maybe get yourself an education. And he was like, yeah, I do. Of course I do.
It'd be great.
And they took him to the hospital and they're like, yeah, his kidney. We're going to get his kidney. And the doctors were like, I don't know. This seems a little unusual. So the doctors wouldn't do it without further documentation. So what they did was abandon him on the street.
Wow.
He slept there for a couple of days. Eventually, he went to a police station and was like, I'm dying. And then the whole thing unfolded. That's probably happened before, right? Successfully?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. Unfortunately.
Now, we have seen a number of stories like this, and I, for the life of me, cannot understand the appeal here. But there's an audience for this type of thing.
Man in court over castration broadcast website. And if you think
Demonetized.
that can't be the headline, it's accurate.
There's a group of people who want to castrate. There's a group of people who want to be castrated. And then there's a third group of people that want to watch that.
All three of those people should be in jail. All three people groups.
Just, can we find what part of the DNA caused that and maybe splice it out?
I think that might be going a little too far.
Too far. Pull it back.
And San Francisco, they are having a real issue, and it may have been their own doing, just maybe.
San Francisco official who pushed to defund the police pleads for more officers in her district. It's a funny headline, but can we get some more social workers and stuff? I mean,
Yeah, is it possible that
I think
she
they-
criticized them and then they just pulled back their presence entirely?
Oh, absolutely. That's what
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because she's like, why won't you send your cops out here? And it's like, well, but I think they're far beyond social workers at this point. I mean, it's great. Have you guys heard of Trank? Trank is this new drug that they're using in Philadelphia. It's part fentanyl and part animal tranquilizer and sedative.
Oh, you know what? I did see a story about that because there was a local interest story about how Narcan is not effective on that.
Because of the tranquilizer.
Yeah.
So it's called the zombie drug because it literally, like, you just stand there and like droop over because of the sedative and you're out on your feet. But it also causes massive open sores all over your body, like a zombie. We got literal zombies in Philadelphia.
seems like, I don't know, like with the Afro Man thing, they could have maybe sent a caseworker there to just see how credible the whole human trafficking thing was. Oh, it turns out, no, that's just random.
Well, how do
crap.
you seize assets or steal property if you do that?
Well, that might be why people are all gung-ho to defund the police in the first place. I mean,
Yeah, we got some problems with the police, no doubt about that. But maybe we all just need to take some time out and open our minds up. Open that third eye.
psychedelic brew. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that.
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how ayahuasca is spelled. Interesting. Psychedelic brew ayahuasca's profound impact revealed in brain scans. That makes a lot more sense because I was reading some stuff from Graham Hancock and I was like, oh, is he on another drug now? No, it's the same. I just had no idea how to pronounce it.
He's a big believer.
Yeah.
I would love to have a third eye right now.
You'd still have a third contact
A
lens.
third contact that's also bothering me.
Or your third eye would just be squinting at the screen, unable to see it.
Yeah.
There's an evolutionary theory that, some of our internal, like your internal monologue, your internal sense of self, some of that came from
The stoned ape theory is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it turns out what this does is it kind of breaks down the separation in your brain. Like you've got all these different parts of your brain that's based on, like
Tasks.
actual, like when you're doing math, it's one part. When you're doing reading, it's another part. When you're dreaming up something,
Yeah.
it kind of breaks down the barriers and it all just comes together in this crazy psychedelic experience. I'm curious about it. I mean, I'm not going to go to South America and do ayahuasca.
Didn't Steve Jobs write that some of his insights into things came from these kinds of experiences?
He was kind of a monster, though.
Yeah.
It seems like you could simulate this by just not being so rigid about how you think about certain things.
Okay, Krista, just stop being nervous.
Well, well, I'm thinking like from an educational standpoint because we teach subjects so rigidly and like there's only one answer to certain things. And so if you go through 20 years of your life learning that way, maybe that's why people struggle to step out of that and they resort to this.
All right, Krista, to have 2 children, one we will give a
ayahuasca every day.
yeah. One will give like a non-traditional education. We'll really let them have an open mind. We'll let them be free. And the other one will give public education, but we'll just hit them with ayahuasca once a week.
I'm thinking like that guy, Ken Robinson, where he talks about like children will come up with really crazy ideas for how to solve problems until they get to school age and then they start that thing. That's where I was going with that. But
Let's burn down the DOE. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm not going to be around when you have to deal with your kids after that because I don't have one. It's not my problem. But I would like to destroy it. Tax time is coming up. It's horrific. And it's hard to figure out the number, even though they already know the number. They could just tell you, but they won't. And you need software for that. And maybe there's a new kind.
Tax Haven 3000 is an anime dating sim that does your taxes.
Is it US locked?
And it's exactly what you'd expect.
Unfortunately, because this does take social security number and some other very important details from you, it has now been blocked from the Steam store.
Yeah.
How many people played that though? And they're like, oh,
I want to write the CVE for that. And it's like, oh, it turns out they weren't using SSL to store your social security number.
Suzuki-chan would never do that to me.
Now, Krista, recently you turned us on to bromine and brominated vegetable oil. And we said, where do we get that? And we started looking it up and it turns out it's in citrus. And I was like, oh, is it in Mountain Dew? Nope, not in the drinks anymore. So where is it? Well, now we know.
Oh, California bill would ban the sale of Skittles, hot tamales, and other food items.
Because of the bromine.
And red dye number 3. And
I've heard a lot of bad
titanium.
things about red dye over the years. Like a lot of people won't give their kids stuff with red dye in it.
Yeah,
Red dye number 5 was really bad.
Yeah.
Well, not was. Oh, well, it's number 3.
This is
I'm
3.
sorry.
Yeah. I don't know what the difference is, but
It's like the Power Rangers. Over time, they're different.
Yeah, well, 5, dialed the cancer up to 11. 3 dialed it back to a 6, but it turns out having a level 6 cancer is still too high.
yeah. Well, when
Dialed it-
combined with other things in your environment.
It dialed it back to a 3, but then also destroyed your kidneys. Well, Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey, it didn't set fire to the box office necessarily. It was more of a passion project, I think.
My conspiracy theory is it was funded by Disney in order to
Extend its copyright somehow.
extend Disney's copyrights. They're like, let's go ahead and fund the worst case scenario so that we can go to senators and be like, look, kids are trying to watch Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Well, it didn't work. And Disney is probably thinking the reason it didn't work is because we didn't have the proper level of control. But we will.
Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey mysteriously pulled from Hong Kong theaters 2 days before premiere, which definitely has nothing to do with China taking over Hong Kong. Definitely, without a question.
At that point, aren't you kind of admitting that you look a little bit like
Yeah, like I just don't understand the fragile ego of being like, this really, really bothers me that someone thinks I look like Winnie the Pooh.
I feel like this is probably a little bit too hot, but when it comes to race relations in this country, we have a lot of this. Because you remember when the TV show Cavemen came out, and people were like, "This is racist against a certain group of people." I'm like, "What? Are you saying that group of people looks like cavemen?" Because I don't think anybody else was thinking that. This is.
I've never heard of that show. When did that come out?
It was not a popular show. It was like a sitcom. They were going off the caveman lawyer from Saturday Night Live.
I like that
They
somebody
developed a whole sitcom based on that one skit.
I like that one person could take a bootleg copy of this movie and feed it to the generative AI now and literally face replace Winnie-the-Pooh with Xi Jinping and then release that back to the internet. That probably already exists.
How much fun would it be to gaslight Xi Jinping and, like be his group of aides or whatever? And he's like, look at this, look what they've done. And he'd be like, no, this looks like the original to me. What are you talking about?
Oh, man. They would never do that, but I would love the reality where that had happened.
And Saudi Arabia, another thing that Mr. Pooh is doing is Middle East peace as he destroys the petrodollar. It's not good for us. Maybe the rest of the world doesn't care that much about it. But they are making friends again and trying to make business deals that may actually lead this to be a reality. And Krista, be sure you pronounce this correctly.
Saudi Arabia's Nyam linked with 2030 Winter Olympics bid.
What?
It's not even done.
So if you recall, there was different parts of Nyam,
Meow.
and one of them was the snowy place. Remember, it was going to be artificial snow all year round. Well, they're saying they're going to have that done by like 2028 or something like that, ready for the Olympics by 2030.
X'd out.
They are doing a crazy amount of work. The satellite photography of that region is insane.
Screw those poor tribes who had to get, their ancestral homelands removed so that we can build a mega city in the desert.
This might be the only remnants of civilization after the fall.
I bet that a lot of those tribal people will have future opportunities as Olympic figure skaters. They have so much place to practice.
It's like not only are we constructing these megastructures in the desert, we're doing it choreographically.
And in Manila, it's funny to see technology bump up against societies that are a little less progressive than we are. In this case, Catholicism is something they take very, very, very seriously. But young kids growing up on social media, they don't quite understand it.
Tenyo suspends masses after Twitter sacrilege.
So this kid did a review of the Eucharist. He said it was a little bit sugary and crunchy, and he enjoyed it. So he gave like a parody food review over the body of Christ. They didn't care for that. He got into a lot of trouble for that. A lot of people were speaking out about how horrified they were by it.
Have you seen one of my favorite like fake sort of review vids was like rating or reviewing countries' different emergency sirens by how terrifying they are?
I think the European ones they don't sound terrifying at all.
No, Japan's wasn't very good either, I didn't think. But it was interesting to hear them all. Commentary was funny too.
There's nothing intimidating about European police cars or sirens.
I met somebody from the UK that thought that American emergency services sounded like the car in Ghostbusters.
Wasn't the car in Ghostbusters an old police car or something?
It was an old ambulance, but it was a unique sound. It didn't.
The one I'm thinking of, it's like the actual like bomb siren kind of sound for each country.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and like US
like
was
the air raid?
Yeah, like US was one of the ones that was like top tier. Israel was really good. And then I think like Japan's was very like low key.
Well, Israel gets to use theirs a lot.
The one for UK should just be the tones that are played on the underground, except a different set of tones.
I think the UK's was pretty good from what I recall. I'll have to listen to that video again.
Slightly more ominous, like bum bum bum. It's like take shelter.
The UK, is it the same one for World War II?
I think so. Yeah. It sounded familiar.
Again, it got some use.
It had some use, yeah.
And finally, I was expecting more from this. This is just a Fox News headline that
I don't understand.
It was about absolutely nothing. You want to talk about a nothing burger? This is a nothing burger and nothing fries.
Wheel of Fortune host Pat Sajak tackles contestant in bizarre moment that has fans puzzled. Pretty sure this was just a PR stunt because it's like, hey, Wheel of Fortune, we're still on the air. He tackled a former professional wrestler, so maybe it was a stunt, or I don't know.
Everyone knows that the only reason you watch Wheel of Fortune is because it comes on before Jeopardy. Nobody's actively seeking out Wheel of Fortune.
So I was thinking like, Vanna White, how old is she? She's holding it together. She still looks pretty good, but she has got to still be younger than anybody watching Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
So this guy was a professional wrestler. I don't know if he's if anybody would know his name, but he did really well. And by the end, after he told him he was a professional wrestler, Pat just decided to have some fun with it.
We call that assault, sir.
Yeah.
I think he was happy because aside from being assaulted by Pat, he took home like 50 grand.
Yeah.
I like it when the clue, like you could say something that's obviously really terrible and the people would respond to that. That was the South Park joke, right? Where
naggers.
Yeah. And he was just like,
What was his last clue? Scroll up. Let's see if we can get it here before the end of the stream.
His mind is wandering.
Oh, wow. Good job.
Put me on the Wheel of Fortune.
You could win some
You
money.
know what? Put me on the Wheel of Fortune. I'll put Van in a hammerlock.
On live television.
I don't think it's live. What we get there? 44 is respectable for that number of stories.
I gotta go rip my eyes out.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye.